started the recording here. All right. So you you have your name listed as EsperJyn
Yes, you
online. Is
can call me
that
Jin.
Jin? Okay. So that's your real name
Jin,
or your
Jin
like
is my name, but
pseudonym?
that's not how it's spelled. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
How's it actually spelled?
It's just Jin, but
Jin.
it
Oh,
was
very
due to
traditional
like,
spelling.
oh yes,
Awesome. And you said you're in Thailand?
oh yes, I'm based in Thailand. I'm born here, and been living here my whole life.
That's awesome. So how did you get interested in animation or storytelling?
Oh, okay. This is gonna be a very long story because ever since I was a kid, since I was like 4 years old or something, I've always been into making like handmade comics, and
Uh-huh.
a lot of them are just never finished. But like I'd like to keep on creating new stories over and over again. And then when I became like 6 years old or something, I got into the Lego stop motion stuff. And
Oh,
I
that was
saw a lot of them on
huge.
YouTube. Yes,
That was
like
huge for a
back in
long
like
time.
2010, 2008 or something, that was huge. And I got very interested in those things, and I want to try and create those things with my Legos too. So what ended up happening was me getting into stop motion, and I kept working on it since like when I was like 7 years old, and I kept on making stuff. And then I created my YouTube channel when I was like around 11, 10 or something. It was back in 2013. And I kept on making it until now. But like recently I started a new channel to, move, not just move away from, but like not exactly moving away from Lego, but like to try a completely new different media when it comes to stop motion and use my
Mhm.
art as like the medium instead of Lego. And they kind of share different target audience. So, to make it work, I sort of have to create a new channel for that, and it seems to be working pretty well in my favor.
Yeah, I mean the Princess Who Forges the Sun is your only video on that second channel aside from
Not really. I did have an animation that I uploaded like a few weeks before that, and it's like it's 2D animation. Like it's more so like a motion, but it's like completely digital. But the Princess Who Forges the Sun is my very first stop motion on that channel. Yeah.
yeah, because I was like, you seem to have just off of one video already captured a bit of an
Oh yeah,
audience.
I basically won a lottery with this one, honestly. It was
Yeah,
very fortunate of me, honestly.
I mean, we every creative wishes they could win that lottery. So, always be grateful for any advantages that come your way. You
Definitely.
know, how long
I
did that animation take to make?
Oh, right. So that that took quite a while actually because I think talked about it before in some other posts that it's actually like a thesis animation from my university,
Mm-hmm.
and the it spans 2 semester. Basically, the first semester, each semester is like 3.5 months or something if I recall correctly. But like, so in total it's like 6 to 8 months in total, maybe around 7 months. But like the first half of it is basically the design and researching bits, and then the second part is me making the puppets and animating them and also editing them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw that you were going through the process of trying to figure out what the best way of creating the characters was. So I think for character creation, the first question is how did you come up with the character idea in the first place? And then how did you get that to design? And then how did you get that to like final product?
You mean the actual characters or the puppet? Uh,
The actual characters. So like starting with how did you come up with the
uh,
character?
the
Then
princess, something like that, right?
yeah, yeah. Like the whole process from start to
Oh,
finish.
oh yeah, this might be a little bit long, man. Honestly, I
That's
hope you hang
okay.
in there with me.
We want to know. I am here for
Yeah, okay.
everybody who has the same question.
All right. I think I talk about it in the behind the scene video before, which you've seen. And
Hmm.
it's actually a very long passion project. I've been working on this basically this world and its people, the characters for the past 5 or 6 years. And the inspiration that I have for each characters are basically my deconstruction of the Shinto kami, or the deities of the Shinto religion. And I basically try to get that traits and their characteristic from all the mythology that I've researched, and try to somewhat deconstruct them into a human being character, or well, it's not really human, but like into a more, what do you call it, like something more human, something more relatable, and try to use their story and like I said, deconstruct into something that is like more down to earth kind of thing. And basically all the characters are kind of, majority of the characters, at least like the main characters, are like deconstruction of these deities or this pantheon. And that's basically my inspiration for how I came up with this character. And the design itself, usually I love doing character designs already, but when it comes to these characters, it's like two separate things on how I design them. So for example, like the princess, she looks like a mechanic and also some sort of a princess herself as well. And she is based on the pantheon Inari, which is the pantheon of oh, there's a lot of things honestly, but like it's mainly agriculture and smithing and innovation and stuff like that. And the Inari deity, they have a messenger, like their symbol are usually associated with fox, and that's why she's wearing a fox mask when she go out the city. So there's like a little nod to the mythology, and they're also their own design that reflect their own characters as well. And it's kind of go the same way with other character in the series that will appear in the series as well, something like that too. But mainly the inspiration come from their the mythology that I based them on, stuff like that.
Is the overarching story also based on these past mythologies, or are you just using this as a
Oh
groundwork to
yes,
create your own mythology and story entirely?
in a way, it's like a little bit of both. I have to say, is I'm not. It's not gonna be a one-to-one, but like there are some inspiration to for those people who know, they'll see like, oh wait, that's the kind of like that time, but it's kind of different. Like
So maybe like
it's some
a
sort of a groundwork. Yeah.
reimagining of these
Yes,
legends.
exactly. Like a deconstruction, reimagine of the mythology of the Shinto kami.
I think reimagining would probably fit better because you want to. It's like deconstruction. That kind of makes people think that you're wanting to tear down, whereas
Oh
reimagining
yeah.
is more of like you have a reverence for it, and you want people to get interested in the same things that interested you in the past, but you have your own way that you feel it needs to be told.
Yeah, I think that's a better word, honestly. Like reimagining.
Yeah, there's another guy I recently found. There's a comic strip that used to be made. I can't remember where it was, but it's called Jusika, and he's an animator, so he's actually been animating his own
Oh.
Jusika original ideas to try and like keep that character, that
Hmm.
comic strip alive. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So it sounds like you're basically doing the same thing with
Oh
the
yes.
Inari and the Shinto Kami. Um, the the actual designs. So for me, I I also can see images of different characters in my head, but I have no
Hmm.
ability to get pen to paper to try and get these designs out. So how do you come up with designs? Do you pull from multiple sources, or is it just kind of like it appears out of nowhere? And then how do you go about actually getting the training to be able to make it a reality?
Design. Okay. I think in order to have that image in your head, you have to consume a lot of media to begin with. Because like, okay, let's face it, I don't think there's no such thing as truly originality in this world. There's always
Mm-hmm.
going to be something that got inspired by another thing and then it transformed into another thing. Like it slowly evolve or not evolve, like transform into different things altogether. And I think that's what happened when, it's like you don't even know, like you are doing it subconsciously, like pulling things from different things that you know, and then you have that ideas of like, oh yeah, this character has to be a mechanic, and sometimes like, oh yeah, you might pull this tiny bit from that mechanic character, you might pull something from that elegant looking princess character, you might pull something like that, and then create into a completely new character. And I think that's how I go about it, where, most of the time it's a lot more subconscious that like, oh, this is what I want. And it kind of ended up, creating something new. And as for how long it takes to train or get the design right, honestly, I've been redesigning this character for the past like 5 years. I'm not even kidding. Like, I know, like, if you ask, like, for the people that are watching this video, and if you already following me, like, some of you might be my friends, stuff like that, they'll know that, like, I've been redesigning this specific character or all the characters in this story, like, over and over and over again. And this probably is, like, the 10th or the 15th iteration of this one same character. And yeah, it takes a lot of time to get the visual right, and, it's kind of like that. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. And I guess because you mentioned that this is also a webcomic idea,
Oh,
right? You're making it
yes.
into a comic. So did the idea to make it a comic come first? Is a comic just an easier form, or do you want this entire series to end up being stop motion in the end?
I do want this story to be told through stop motion in the end. But before this, right, the reason why I wanted to be a comic is because I thought it was like the more accessible way for people to enjoy the story. And when I first came up with the idea of making this into a comic, it was like back in 2020. And during that time, I haven't figured it out yet how I could translate it into stop motion. So that was completely out of the question to begin with. But uh, now I sort of have a completely different perspective where maybe I could make it work somehow. But at the same time, I also have to make it in the comic in case like, you know, there is something physical that people wanna like collect, like just in case like maybe one day I can turn into a book or something for people who wish to collect or something like that.
Yeah, I
And it could
know.
work as a pretty good storyboard.
I agree. The it's kind of funny because there was a movement, more specifically in America, called like Comicsgate that occurred, and it was trying to get a lot of people to be independent comic creators and actually like
Hmm.
publish their comics and kind of
Oh,
subvert
that's
the
wonderful.
Marvel DC stranglehold on comics. And a lot of people who worked for those companies were the people who spearheading that movement. So I've actually backed a lot of comics from people, and so some things that I've seen people do, which an idea might be an idea for you, is they'll make a run of like 10 comics and then they'll do a collection where it's like volume 1 of the story up to that point as they're writing the next bit of the story. So it gives them like a buffer, some extra money, and then anybody who missed the original comics that you sent out can instead uh, just get one book that has everything you've written up to that point. And I know people who have made web comics have also done this. Well, they'll do the web comic. People can donate on the web comics, and at a certain point in the story where they feel they're ready, they will turn the web comic up to that point into a physical comic that people can own. Because I'm one of those people who likes owning physical media, so I'm the kind of person who would back
Oh
that
yes,
stuff.
same here. That's the thing. That's the one of the reason why I want to make into the comic as well, because like I love collecting books and comics. So that is, like it's not exactly like, oh yeah, for the sake of, making it available to buy, but more so like, yeah, it's something I would like to own myself, like my own
Mm-hmm.
creation and make into a book. So that's probably one of the reasons why I would want it to make into a comic. But at the same time, I also want to make it into a stop motion as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
the
a pretty good
way
idea, honestly.
I think about it, because I want to do the same thing. I have loads of stories in my head that I'm wanting to tell, and I've been one of the reasons for myself on my channel. I'm reading loads of uh, like old stories is that I want to write a comic series that starts from the creation of this universe up to the end of that universe. But I was
Ah.
like, I realized, kind of like you said, you need to consume a lot of media. I was like, I actually
Mhm.
don't, I'm not connected enough to the kinds of stories I want to be written in this series of comics I want to make. So I'm going to go back to the oldest stories and read them so that I feel like they're inside of me. And then I can
Mm.
pull from any of them to create the characters and maybe get plot lines out of them. So I'm totally with you on the you need to consume a lot of other media and convert all of that stuff into an amalgamation or a combination that becomes entirely unique and nobody else has ever seen before, which I think is one of the great
Absolutely.
parts of creation in the first place. It's like I can consume so much other media and different parts of it will matter to me than matters to somebody else. And because those parts matter to me, when I create something, it'll be different from somebody else's creation because it's like, well, these are the things that matter to me, even though we could have watched and read the same movies and books, but we'd both come away and create different stories off of what we took away from those stories. So have you ever had that in your life where you watched a movie or read a book that you knew somebody else had watched or read, and both of you have a different thing inside of that story that you consider the best part of that story?
Oh yes, absolutely. I think it goes without saying that like a lot of the time when you talk about like stories, book, or any movies, like a lot of people just takes thing differently from those story and may have different views on them. Um, I'm trying to think of an example right now, like what would be the best example that I have recently that me or my friend have like a completely different opinion on it, and it came out like totally different. I think, oh, that's kind of hard, honestly.
Well, let's pull it back one question. What is just an example? What do you primarily consume for media? Do you primarily do movies, books, comics? Like what do you like consuming?
I like reading a lot of comics and manga, and I also watch some movies as well. But like recently, I've been kind of busy, so I don't really have that much time to sit down and watch like many movies as I used to be able to do.
Same.
I watch some TV series and stuff too. Um, I'm
What
trying to think. What?
which
Yeah.
like comics, mangas, movies, what are the ones that to you feel have stuck with you the most?
Oh, manga. Um, I think. I think I can name like each one of the of different uh, like media if you like. For manga, I think my favorite manga of all time is probably Berserk. I don't know if you heard of it before.
Berserk is very popular over here. I know about it.
Yes, yes, I really like Berserk. Such a phenomenal story. For a movie, oh, that's a tough one, honestly. Like you can't really say like what your favorite movie is because like it's gonna
What
take like ages
first one that came
to
to
think.
mind whenever you started thinking about movies?
Right now, Right now, the one thing that came onto my mind is a Chinese Odyssey. I don't know if you heard about that movie before, but it's like it's a Stephen Chow movie that is like an adaptation, like a somewhat of like a comedic uh, take on Journey to the West, and
Oh, oh.
and it was like
I don't think it's called Chinese Odyssey over here. I think it's literally called Journey to the West. It's a comedy film.
yeah, it's like two different part, right? It's like
Yeah,
part
yeah,
one
yeah.
and part two when they like there's like some time travel shenanigan that happen. Like, is that the
I think
same one?
I'm thinking of we might be thinking of the same one. Is in the first movie the guy who's trying to become enlightened, he sings to all the demons, right? To try and get them to be good.
Uh, I'm not sure if it's that one, but like, is it a comedy story for
It
you?
is a comedy
Like,
story.
I know like the second like the first one. Oh, wait, no, it might be a different one actually because there's so many adaptation of Journey to the West.
Okay, it is a different
So
one that I'm thinking of.
oh, it's a
I
different
just
one.
I
All
just looked
right.
it up. So you're talking about a different one than I am. There
Yeah,
is one
you've
that
never
was
seen that one before?
no, I haven't seen that one before. So that's new. A Chinese Odyssey. I will add that to
It's a
my
pretty
list.
lovely movie.
I like pretty movies. And you
Yes.
said also comics. What are some
Oh,
comics?
comics. I really love the Supergirl story, The Woman of Tomorrow. Woman of Wait, that's what
Woman of
it's what it
Tomorrow.
called. Woman of Tomorrow, I think that's what it's called. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
Woman of Tomorrow. I think that's a more recent one, right?
Yes, it's very recent. I think it's written by Tom King or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing.
So that is what was referenced as one of the
The
inspirations for
movie,
the
yeah,
movie.
the movie that's
I've
coming
actually not
out.
read Woman of Tomorrow, and I also people reference they're like, oh, got inspired from this comic in a lot of different comic movies that come out, and then you're like, I've read
Woman of
that
Tomorrow?
comic. Yeah, that was one of the ones that they referenced as being an inspiration for it. I have no clue. I actually haven't read Woman of Tomorrow.
It's such a phenomenal comic. I think it's like it's such a like I said, it's such a lovely story with such a beautiful art too. I really love both the story and the art,
What do
and
you like about the story so much?
I think it's an interesting take on like you know how Superman and Supergirl are like completely different character altogether, but like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the time people don't really explain to you why there is a difference between Superman and Supergirl. Supergirl is a character who, you know, arrived on Earth like way later and you know her
Mm-hmm.
entire like reason of existing is just been shattered. Like Superman is already all grown up and now she's like stuck in a planet she's not familiar with and now she has some anger issue because like everything is gone. She's grieving and you know in that comic it shows you who she is a character. Like yeah, she is going through all of that, but then she still understand kindness in her own way and she doesn't really go about the same way as Superman, but at the same time they are both people who is inspiring to many people, and I really like that story. It's such a phenomenal way to tell a story about Supergirl.
Are there any bits of that story that you're putting into your character? Who was it? Minari is the princess.
Uh, Not really. I don't think so
Not
because
really.
like Woman of Tomorrow, I think I because I read it like way after I already came up with the idea. So yeah, I think maybe subconsciously I might put some stuff in there. Like I don't know, like if I maybe in the future or something like that. Like when I expand on the story. But I think if anything, I really like the journey of the character in that story. But I don't think I put in like I say that I didn't really put anything from that story into Minari as a character. I think Minari as a character is more. Oh, that's kind of tough. I think Minari as a character, I don't even know where I kind of channeled this character from. Maybe my own personal life experience or something along that line.
All right, that was actually essentially where I was hoping to go. So, in whenever you're creating characters, even like Minari, is it usually are your characters usually like pieces of you that you've turned into a character, or are they usually their own being entirely, and you don't really feel much of a relation to them?
I think, okay, this is my personal opinion, and I think everything that is ever created by someone is going to be a piece of them, whether or not they notice it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Because often and not, people like to create things that they are familiar with to, in a way, channel their inner desire or inner thought onto their creation in one way or another. And for me, every single character I created, I like to believe is an amalgamation of different things in life that may be part me, part someone else that I experience with, like have experienced it with my life and stuff like that. And it's like a mixture between both myself and maybe people or experience around me, if I have to say.
Are there any characters in your story that
That
are
is like
references
truly me.
to no, to other people specifically, where you're like, oh, this person acts exactly the way I want this character to act?
I'd say I don't really make a one-to-one reference to like a real life person I know. Like maybe like tiny bit of aspect of them, maybe just how they think or how they would react to certain things, but not like a one-to-one, copy of that person.
Yeah, I like asking questions like that because I find, uh, you know, watching other people's stories and interviews and stuff, especially for like writers. Sometimes
Oh
you'll have a writer who says like, "Oh, I wrote this part specifically for this person to like act in," because they were
yeah.
hoping they'd get that role, right? And for other people, and I'd say this is more how I write, and it sounds kind of like how you're writing, if I'm assuming correctly, towards like you don't really have people in mind as a reference point. It's just the characters exist inside of you, and you want them to exist in a way that everyone else can see.
Oh yes, I think it's something like that.
Yeah. So I know for
Because
my
like
sorry, go.
no, because when I write this thing, I never really write with the intention of it being turned into a movie or anything. Like
Mm-hmm.
I write for me, and most of the time, like I don't really have the expectation of like, oh yeah, this must be played by this specific person or something like that. I like with the casting, for example, like I'll just look for someone who is like, you know, fit like the image of the character that I have, and instead of like the go like other way around.
Yeah, that's what I would. That's essentially how I would do it as well. It's like I have the original character, I've created the character, and now I have a voice in my head. Because for you, with the stop motion, I'm sure you have a voice. So it's like,
Oh
okay, well,
yes.
how do I find a person that has her voice? Because they don't think of it like, oh, this person, I want my creation to have her voice. It's I want to find the person that has my creation's voice.
Oh yes, definitely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So that's a that's a good question for the princess and the other characters. How did you go out and find the voice actors or anybody else who helped? What parts did you do for the story, and what parts did you get help completing?
The only part I got help completing was the voice actors. Like the rest, sort of like did it all by myself. Oh, and the music. The music I basically used music from the YouTube library, basically
Okay,
that.
good
And
choices. It was nice
the music.
music. Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. And for the voice actors, I basically opened a casting call on a website called Casting Call Club. And, I was just, I didn't really expect anyone to send in an audition because it's a completely, original idea with no IP attached to it. So I thought people wouldn't be interested in that. But surprisingly, many people are interested. Like many people would be an underestimate like underestimating it because I think there was like a total of like 300 different people turning in their audition, and I was very fortunate, on that part. And yeah, luckily there are many people, many talented people who volunteer, and you know, unfortunately, like I can't really like have a role for everybody. So, but yeah, like the people that is the final voice actor to play the characters. They all did like such a phenomenal job and pretty much fit the character that I want perfectly as well.
Awesome. Whenever uh like you said, it's like, what did you? Was it like a paid gig, or were you like, this is for a school project? Would love any help? Like, how did you?
Oh,
How did these
the
people
way I
show
put it
interest?
up, I put it up as like, oh, this is my thesis animation. So, it's not a paid gig right away because at first I didn't expect anyone to actually like, you know, um, audition for the thing. So I was kind of put it up out there and kind of like, yeah, if there's like a few people who audition, that'd be great. So, that's another option or something like that. But yeah, like I was, like I said, like it's crazy. There's so many people who volunteered for the work, and I'm absolutely, grateful for that.
Um, how did you? I got two questions for the people that auditioned. What about your project were they like? Hey, I like this about your project, or was it mostly just like, I'm just looking for roles. Hope you like my voice.
I think it's a little bit of both, honestly. There are like two side of that, honestly. There are many people who commented on the project and said like, oh, I really like the art style, and here's my audition. Like, I would love to be in it. And there are people who I think on that website are like are up and coming voice actor who want to have like an experience, like want to get actual experience playing characters. So they sort of like sending in audition and try to like get a role so that they have like part in like portfolio and stuff like that. I think it's like a little bit of both, and it's in a way I see it as like, it's like, oh yeah, us helping each other in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, I need voice actors, and they need voice acting like job, so that way like they can put it on their portfolio and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know for myself, like I started out trying to make videos. And I made like four different channels before this current one, and I always had ideas where I was like, oh, I need help with this, but like my friends and family either didn't have the skills or they weren't interested in helping, so I kept having to make my ideas smaller and smaller until I got to the point where I was like, okay, I can't find anybody around me who can help since I wanted to do live action stuff. So I was like, what's something
uh
that only requires me to do so that I can get interest and eventually in the future find people who are interested? And I think my problem might have been an issue of, um, potentially like where I live, and
mhm.
that it's a big time investment. And for you, you get to have people who are like, one, you can basically already create the entirety of your thing without voices. You could just have lines of dialogue, so you get to tell your story no matter what. It is something that just requires you, and then you get to send out all of the stuff that you have and go, hey, I'm looking for people to help. And so people, you actually have something to show already, which it makes it easier to attract people. uh, so do you think that collaborating with people is easier whenever you have something to show?
uh I think I think it honestly depends. I think it might help so that people who, would volunteer to, to work on your work or would want to like work with you can have like some sort of a insurance that like, oh yeah, this project will actually be made. Like, this guy actually, is serious about this. And I think that would probably help convince people to, uh, audition for your stuff, definitely.
Were there any previous projects that you made or that you were trying to make that just never happened?
Oh, that would be a lot of my Legos. Okay, I actually have another channel before this, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like like I said, it's like a Lego channel. I think there are many, but I mainly do superheroes related Lego video. It's like my fan film of like, say, uh, a certain Batman storyline from the comic, and I adapt into a Lego stop motion. And I think a lot of them didn't get made because a lot of the time, either I do not have the time or there was not, like, I just couldn't find the right voice actor for a certain role, and I just didn't end up receiving the lines or like there are times that sometimes it happened where people may have forgotten about the project and then kind of move on without like remembering it or something, but it does happen sometimes. There are so many projects that I completely scrap, but or me completely scrap because of my own personal reason as well. There are something that happened, but yeah, there are numerous projects that didn't get made. Even with comics, I think right now there's like, how many was it? I think there's like 4 different versions of each of chapter 1 of my story, and I don't think any of them outside of the first version was ever public anywhere. And it was just mainly because like I finished it and thought it was like, man, this is not good enough. I didn't like this and that. It was kind of like, so I didn't really like go anywhere with them. So I just kind of left it to rot in like in my own hard drive or something like that.
How many ideas versus final products do you have?
Ooh, I think there are significantly more ideas than actual final products. Like, let's face it. Okay, let's just, for a Yomi, for example, the princess who forges the sun, which is just like a tiny bit of the section of the entire story. Right now, there's only one product where there's like probably like at least 50 different stories that I wish to tell. And I've been talking about this story with my friend, just like, man, I want to make this, I want to make this, but like all of them just ended up being like a potential story rather than an actual finished product. So yeah, I think I do have a lot of story ideas, and right now is a good start. Like at least one of them get made into an actual stop motion, and it was finally public. As for Lego, I honestly lose count. Like, since like I don't even bother with those. It's like 10 years worth of like of content making.
What is that channel like? Do you still plan on making stuff for that channel, or have you essentially abandoned that channel?
I come back here and there making a story on that channel because like before I start working on The Princess Who Forges the Sun, I announced that I will be making. Okay, this is very ambitious. I don't
All
think it
right,
will
go
be
for it.
finished. I wanted to adapt the entirety of Journey to the West into Lego.
That's
That's not
very big
happening.
undertaking.
Yes. I thought it was like, I don't know, I just came up one day and I thought like that would be a good idea. So I just took some pictures for promotional media and I said like, first chapter of Journey to the West in Lego in 2026. That's not happening. Like, I don't think it's happening. So, stop motion as well. That would take tremendous amount of time and money, especially like money here because it's made of Lego. And, you know, we all know that Lego is infamously expensive.
It just keeps
And
getting
now
more
that
expensive.
yes, it's kept on like I could not afford doing this anymore, especially how I have like my passion project on the line, and there's a lot of like I rather spend money on making the paper stop motion than like Lego. I could probably make like a few films with the amount of money I spend on like an average Lego set. Like, let's be real here nowadays. But yeah,
What?
the
Sorry,
channel is
finish.
still quite active, yeah. But I
What is the
don't
name of the
really upload
channel?
that
I'll have
much.
to check it out.
Oh, it's called the BrickGen,
The
like
Brick Gin.
brick,
Okay.
like the BrickGen. I recently uploaded like a Batman video, like a few months back or something, like my own completely original story.
Hmm.
But yeah,
So you keep going back to comics and especially like DC characters like Batman and Supergirl and you mentioned Superman as well. So how have those who are your favorite heroes and how have they and their stories kind of like affected how you create stories?
I think that is tough because honestly, I think like when I talk about my own personal story, I talk about mythology, like especially Eastern mythology and Western heroes. I think like they're kind of completely different side of like
Yeah.
things altogether. I think I think when it comes of my personal favorite character when it comes to DC or Marvel, I don't really read that much Marvel, but I do have like my certain favorite, and I think it's gonna be a very shocking answer. But for DC, I don't want to say that Batman is my favorite per se because that's not entirely true. But I do like the mythos around Batman. Like it's not just Batman that I like, but more so the world around Batman and everything around Batman, like his rogue gallery or something like that. And I think my favorite aspect of that is my favorite aspect of that story for me of Batman stories in general is the psychology behind the villains and Batman too is a character because like most of the time when it comes to Batman's story, the deep cause of each conflict usually reside within a psychological issues rather than you know like an actual like world-ending threat. Like even if it's a world-ending threat, it's caused from you know like that sort of issue, like psychological issue, like Scarecrow, for example, and Joker, for example. Like all of them have their own problem, and those problems create who they are as a character, and it also challenged Batman on like a psychological level on how to deal with them, and it's more so of a mental uh, battle than anything, and that's I think heavily inspired me to write character a certain way where not write character a certain way, but like write story a certain way where for me I don't really focus on the event itself, but more so like the event doesn't drive the story, but more so the character action and the character mentality is what drive the story forward.
So you're a very character first writer.
Yes.
That's cool. I know some people, they tell stories because they love the action, and then I would say I'm also a character first. This is another question for writing, and this is I'm trying to think of how to word it properly. I have this idea in my mind. So, right, it's like I believe in God, uh, and one of the things people refer to him as is an author, right? He's the author of
Mm-hmm.
creation, is one of the terms used. And so, whenever, and I'm sure you've heard debates about like, do we have free will or not? It's like, well, I don't,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
I,
that's
I don't have the
interesting. Yeah,
ability to know if I have free will or not, right? If I'm technically not choosing, but I wouldn't know that I'm not choosing, right? So I've always thought the argument in the long run was kind of a weird one. But whenever I'm writing stories, one of the things I think about is it's like, is this my character or did this character already exist in some way and I am just putting down that character's story for other people to experience. Kind of like all of imagination and all ideas already exist, but my mind is able to see certain pieces of it or just collect certain pieces of it and I'm like, "Oh, this character that I just imagined is a character that already existed, but I'm the one who has managed to grab onto this character's idea, and now I want to tell that character's story." And so whenever I'm writing stories for characters, I don't feel like I'm I don't feel like I'm writing the story for that character. It feels more like this character already exists and I'm trying to write down the history of this character in a way that is interesting to you, the reader.
I think that is a very interesting way to look at things, or at least like to try what's it called? That's a very interesting mindset, honestly. And I can definitely see where you're coming from. And I think there's this certain thing called like archetype,
Mm-hmm.
where I think it may be something similar to what you just said, where throughout history, there are certain things that will repeat itself in one way or another. Like people, like that's what I think. That's why there are archetypes that label people like, oh yeah, you're the you would be the magician character, you would be the knight character or something like that. Because like I feel like throughout the year, throughout all history, I think people. This is what my personal belief. There's no like I don't know if there's any actual like academic backup or anything, but like I think there there is only a few stories and people like and different characters are just like there is it's basically like an adaptation of different archetype in one way or another, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That's my
So they have, if you've ever heard of it, they've Joseph Campbell's Man of a Thousand Faces, which has been cited a
hmm
ton, where he's like every story roughly follows this same arc, and the arc is like you have the character at the beginning of the story in their natural state, where they'd basically be like an NPC character in the story from their
oh
starting
yes.
point, and then you have the call to action. So for
Oh, it's like the
using your
hero journeys,
story,
right?
sorry, what?
Like the hero journeys, right?
Yeah, the hero journey. Joseph Campbell is the one who has made the primary one. So using Yomi, so it's like her natural state is the princess in the tower. She doesn't do anything. She's just there. She's
Yes.
called upon by what's the character's name? That's like
The
her aide,
retainer,
the
Runa.
retainer. What's his name? Sorry,
Yeah, the retainer. Runa. Like
Runa. Okay.
Runa. It's like Luna but with an R. It's actually like I want to make his name sounds like Rune, like but I think like I don't want it to be like Luna because like, Luna is like a very common name, and I kind of want to have something a little bit more unique.
I mean, just name him
But yeah,
Rune if you want it to sound like that.
yeah. No, I think
Um,
I think also I think Runa is an actual like way that uh, Japanese people write the kanji for the word Luna. Oh, that's a very lovely cat.
Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah.
he's bugging me. He's got food and water, but he unless I pretend to put it out for him, he doesn't think it's there for some reason. Um,
Oh, we just
yeah.
want your
I'll
attention.
show you the fun bit about this cat is that he's got
Yeah.
a nub tail.
Oh,
He was born that way.
I think in my country there's a lot of cat with similar pattern as well. I don't know if it's like
I think it's a rather popular pattern for cats.
really.
Yeah, well, I don't really know what the pattern is called, but it just reminds me of tiger stripes. So I think it's
Oh
just a
yeah,
natural fur pattern found throughout the globe.
probably. In my country, yeah, there's like a lot of them that looks like that. I think it's kind of interesting that like even in America they do share similar things. But yeah, back to where were we again? The
We
character.
were talking about archetypes and
Oh yeah.
that there's like one story, but there are multiple variations of the single story.
Yes, absolutely. Like, I think people talk about the hero journey like multiple times before, and like you said, I think you can pretty much break down almost every single story into the hero journey, and it would still work.
The one of the most famous. It's kind of funny because the same guy did both these. What a lot of people consider the best way of using the hero's journey to create a new story, and also the worst way of using the hero's journey to ruin an original story, which is George Lucas with the Star Wars films.
hmm
So he knew Joseph Campbell, the guy who wrote The Man of a Thousand Faces, and kind of like came up with that hero's journey idea. And so for episode 4, 5, and 6, he followed very strictly, mostly strictly, the outline for the hero's journey, which was Luke Skywalker. He's just a farm boy. He's literally nobody. He's on the
Yeah.
farthest planet, uh, doing farm work, which is like the most basic of all jobs. And then he's
Yes.
like, he gets the call to adventure where Obi-Wan comes over, tells him, "Hey, there's a princess that needs saving," and he goes, "Well, I have to stay home and do farm work. They need me." Right? Even though the entire time he's been talking about how he wants to leave, he goes back home, realizes that home's changed, and then after the refusal of the call, goes on the adventure. And then from the adventure forward, he transforms from a farm boy to a Jedi Knight, and then by the end of it, becomes a Jedi Master, and then returns back to the state of normalcy at the end of the story, where it's like, okay, the Empire's gone, and now I'm just
No peace and
yeah. There's peace again. So now he just becomes a normal person because there's no greater thing for him to achieve. I mean, obviously they made stories outside of it, which is also very because you said like it consuming lots of other media. I once did a deep dive myself because Star Wars is one of my favorite stories ever. So if you watch his Star Wars and you look into what inspired him, you will see references all over of films throughout like the entirety of film history and for multiple other places like Akira Kurosawa. Do you know who that is? Like Seven
oh
Samurai?
yes,
So there are
yes.
references to Akira Kurosawa films inside of Star Wars, and he loved the old serials like Flash Gordon. So if you go watch Flash Gordon, the old black and white sci-fi series that used to exist, the very beginning of that series, there would always be a text crawl before the actual show started explaining the situation in the world at the time. And that's how he starts each of the Star Wars films, is with a text crawl explaining the situation of the world. And then because it's a sci-fi, a lot of his ideas for how science fiction should work actually came from Flash Gordon. But there are multiple other and like the Force is a mixture of like Buddhism and Christianity, and I think one other religion that I can't think of at the moment for how he tried to come up with the idea of the Force. So he's a great reference point for somebody who like knows and amalgamated so many ideas into an idea that seemed entirely unique. But he's like, oh no, this is like based on this, and this is based on this, and this is
Oh
based on
yes.
this. All the way down, everything's a reference. But because he had such a unique way of presenting it to the world, everyone considers it an original thing, even though from his
Oh,
point of view, it's all just references.
oh yes, definitely. And I think that's a very interesting that kind of set like the original trilogy apart from like the more modern Star Wars, in my opinion. Um, like Akira Kurosawa that you mentioned, like even now, I think a lot of the recent stuff they have some reference to him, but I don't really feel like it's as, you know, interesting as how it was done from back in the day. It's like too obvious in some certain
It's
area.
it's done without love is the way I would describe
Yeah.
it. Like George Lucas created everything and he loved all of the things that he was bringing into Star Wars and using as reference points. And so the way I've heard somebody describe it is Star Wars is no longer a show that's referencing things outside of itself. It's now a series that references itself for everything.
Oh
So it's like a
yes.
degenerating story because it's never looking to the past and creating something new to move forward. It's just looking at itself and reflecting itself over and over and over again. But every time it copies itself, it's just a lesser version of itself. So it becomes more
Yes.
boring.
I think speaking of Star Wars, I think that's exactly like what my friend like actually I'm also a very big Star Wars fan myself, and you know I had a talk with my friend recently about like this the modern state of Star Wars, and we realized that when Star Wars was trying not to be like not trying to not be Star Wars, but like not trying too much to be Star Wars is usually end up being interesting. Look at Endor, for example. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's like such an interesting take on Star Wars because it's not trying to be just like referencing a certain things that already happened. More so, it's trying to tell its own completely different side of the story with different inspiration and stuff. And I think that's what makes it so interesting to begin with. In comparison to like the more recent Mandalorian stuff, I feel like, okay, now you're just making a callback to a certain thing that, is famous within the Star Wars universe, and it kind of feels a little distasteful, in my opinion.
Yeah, so that would be a good example. So Andor is referencing things outside of Star Wars to tell
Yeah.
a new Star Wars story, whereas Mandalorian is referencing older Star Wars stories to tell the same Star Wars story over
Yes.
again. So it's like whenever you're watching The Mandalorian, you're just getting a weaker version of the same story you had at another time that was better. And with Andor, it's like, oh, this is continuing to grow Star Wars by using things that aren't Star Wars, so it feels more original. It
Yes.
feels more unique. Um, Kind of like I, I tell people as soon as I watched the very first Disney Star Wars film, The Force Awakens, I was already done with Disney Star
It
Wars.
was basically just episode like
It was
New Hope
episode
over
4.
again.
Yeah, and so
Yes, like it was.
it was like, oh, I'm rewatching this new trilogy that's literally just the original trilogy, but it also breaks canon because at the end of episode 6, the Republic is in charge. They are now,
Yes.
for all intents and purposes, taking the same place as the Empire, except that they're the good guys. So they should not be the rebellion anymore. They should
Oh
be
yes, that
struggling
absolutely made no
against
sense.
rebelling planets and being like, you need to join the Republic. And they're like, well, we just had this terrible regime and that we want you gone or whatever. And then the remnants of the Empire coming together to try and get a final push, even though they have lost both of their heads as with the Emperor and Darth Vader. So
I
it's
think
like,
that's what they're trying to do with Mandalorian right now, just to justify the existence of the First Order or whatever.
yeah,
don't,
but
I don't
there's no way
buy
to
that.
justify it off of
Yes.
the way episode 6 ended. So it was like you, there was a story to tell. Like my sister, so funny story for my family. I liked reading comics, but my sister could never get into comics, even though she really liked superheroes. We could both watch the animations and the movies, but she the way she put it, she's like, I'd rather read a book or watch a movie, and a comic is too much in the middle of reading a book or watching a movie for me to enjoy it. And I was always a slower reader, and we both love Star Wars. So she would read the Star Wars expanded universe novels, and I would read the comic books. And so basically, both go and read a different book, and then she'd come over and be like, "This is everything happening in the Star Wars expanded universe." Back whenever they were expanding it through books and not movies, before Disney. And then I would tell her all of the comic stories that I read, and so that was how we both got like pop culture from different sides.
The comic is the recent one like run by Marvel, right? Or is it like older than that? Or
So for me, the comics I was reading was a lot of DC stuff. I actually have a shelf right here of comics. I've been getting collections of them. I have Superman for all seasons and a lot of. If you have you ever heard the Superman Batman World's Finest series?
oh, is the oh wait, was it is it the one that like the first arc was adapted into the animated show, like the most wanted stuff, like the one
Yeah,
where
yeah,
Lex
yeah.
Luthor
Most
became
Wanted.
president or something?
That's
Yeah,
exactly
all
it.
right, yeah.
And
Yes,
I
yes,
got
yes.
it.
I actually love that run.
This?
Yes, I actually have that book too as well.
Yeah, I like it. One of my favorite stories, if I can find it. Well, actually, this is a really good one too. This is one that I really liked, the Search for Kryptonite, because this story
yeah,
actually
I
changed the
get them.
DC universe a pretty good bit. So in this story, it actually has one story where I really like, and I think it shows off Superman's personality really well. Um, Superman almost dies just kind of like on a routine run throughout to just like a really easy criminal because the guy had kryptonite randomly. And so Superman
yeah.
goes to Batman and he just tells him, he's like, hey, I could potentially die just because a random Joe Schmo has kryptonite and I wouldn't be able to help people anymore. So I'm asking you to help me remove all kryptonite from Earth so that nobody has access to it anymore. And so at the end of the story arc, what Superman does is he goes to Batman and he says, this is the last piece of kryptonite on Earth. you're the only person I trust to do what it takes if I ever go rogue. So he hands Batman the only kryptonite that could kill him. And at the very end of the story, there are three moments in this particular arc that I really liked. Is Superman hands him that piece of kryptonite, and what Batman has inside of his Batcave is actually a humongous store of all the different kryptonites they've found, because he is also afraid of what could happen to Superman, and he's like, well, I have to be able to stop him. But Superman doesn't know about it, and they use that for a later story arc. But another part of the story,
what Batman does best, just
it's what prepare
plans to.
Did you ever read? It was Justice League Babel, is what it was called.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, so that is one of the most popular Justice League stories ever. It's Ra's al Ghul sneaks, the League of Shadows sneaks into the Batcave, steals all of Batman's files for how to stop all of the superheroes, and they start systematically taking out all superheroes on the planet using Batman's files. And nobody knew that Batman had contingency plans for them. So they're like, how do they know how to stop all of us non-lethally and lethally? And then Batman has to come out and go, hey, I've literally been keeping tabs on all of you and creating plans to eliminate any of you should any of you try and take over the world. And so it causes huge tension where the Justice League's like, you've been trying to keep track of us and how to murder us this entire time. And he's like, if you don't understand how dangerous you are to the average person, and you think it's wrong for me to be keeping tabs on all of you, then you're the insane one. And so they have to like come to terms with the fact that they're like, yeah, we are gods among men. And we could, like some of us could literally blow the planet up. So it's like, you did a terrible thing, but at the same time, you have a point that none of the rest of us were really willing to consider. Here's another moment. So Amanda Waller, they found out that the U.S. government had been creating bioweapons out of kryptonite to stop Superman. And it's one of those moments where it's like, how does Superman stop a humongous, unstoppable monster? And it's like, well, the way that you stop a humongous, unstoppable monster isn't to punch it. What you do is you grab the humongous monster's family so that it remembers its humanity. And then they have, that's how they stop that program from continuing. But the one story arc inside that really, really got me, and this one legitimately made me cry whenever I read it, was they found a piece of kryptonite that these old people had, and they enchanted it because they cut it out into the shape of moons. Mm-hmm. And what happened whenever Superman and Batman both touched the piece of kryptonite is that Batman got all of Superman's powers and Superman became powerless. But it started making Batman go insane slowly. So Batman had all the power in the world, but he was losing grip on reality. And so they had to go and find the other piece of the kryptonite. And I don't know why I can't find it, because it's really poignant moment. Superman and Zatanna literally have to find Batman, create fake illusions of his parents in Crime Alley, because he's been doing nothing but trying to stop crime, and there's basically no crime anymore. He's just only been using Superman's powers to end crime. He's not stopped for like months. And so Zatanna casts an illusion on him to where his parents come back alive because he stopped crime on Earth. And so he goes over and he hugs the illusions, and he's just bawling his eyes out because he's like, I did it. I stopped all crime.
Oh, is it the book from like where that image is from? When like
where he's like crying. This is the book.
Right. I've seen that.
Yeah, so that's where that image comes from. And whenever you get to that moment, because he literally he solos the entire Justice League because they're like, hey, you need to stop because you're actually starting to harm people now. You almost killed some people. back there? And he's like, I'm fine. I'm ending crime. And they're like, yeah, but you're actually going insane, and we need you to stop because you have Superman's powers and you can't stop yourself. And he solos the entire Justice League with Superman's powers before that illusion happens. And then he has to, has that giant breakdown moment. And they return everything to normal. But it was a really cool inversion of like what happens when Batman, who is, like you said, the psychology is what makes him interesting, where it's like, oh, he literally can perpetually, without stopping, keep the war on crime going. What happens to a person like that?
I think something like that similar to happened to Batman again in I think it was like Dark Side War when he took over the Mobius chair, right?
Yeah.
And he did similar things as well, where he goes around and like ending all crimes, and it was like slowly killing him as well because like he became a new god. And I think I thought it was very interesting too, but it's not as interesting as the one that you just told me about because like to resolve this issue, it was like bring him to where it all started, and that's kind of put him back to like his senses. But yeah,
So I think they're it's cool to meet a fellow comic lover. I guess is the best way of
oh
putting
yes,
it.
I think unfortunately for me, like a comic is very expensive in Thailand. They're like
Really, oh, that is kind of unfortunate.
incredibly this expensive. Like some books even goes for like I don't know, like $50 or something in America, like in like in US dollars, like because they have to be imported
Yeah, that
from
would.
America.
It's like the
It's
price
so rare
on
and
this
so
one is $12.99 whenever it was originally published.
oh, I could not possibly wish to get my hand on a comic for $12.99.
Yeah, these are kind of old. I want to collect the entire series at some point because it's one of my favorite runs.
I think that runs I have the first and the second volume. I think the one with Supergirl and the one with the first one.
Yeah, so that is Apocalypse, I think is what that one's called, where they get
Yes,
Supergirl.
yes, the one where Dark
Because that
Side
was
and
that was
Supergirl.
whenever they first reintroduced her back into the DC universe after the Final Crisis.
Oh yes. Oh, that's actually quite a long time. Like
Yeah,
gap.
that's an old uh, at this point an old run because they've already rebooted the universe like two more
Yeah,
times since
they
then.
rebooted like 3 times already. So
Yeah, the
I haven't
reboots
been
are cool, but
keeping
at the
up
same
with
time,
like the recent stuff, honestly.
it's not really worth keeping up with. I stopped keeping up with the new comics for a long time. That's kind of why Comicsgate and Indie Comics started happening. Was that Marvel and DC both they kind of sold out? I guess is the best way of putting it. Where the
I
original
think.
creators all kind of got kicked out and new creators got put in, but the new
Oh
creators
yeah.
just aren't good at their job, and so nobody was buying the comics anymore. They're kind of just being propped up at this point by outside revenue.
Yes, especially like manga and stuff like that as well has been killing the
Oh
comic
yeah.
industry lately.
Well, the
That
reason
like
it's killing it is that comics nowadays just aren't good. Like you can
yes.
track it where it's like comics used to be dominant in all of the West, and they were also getting into Eastern markets.
Oh
But
yes.
because comics for the past like 15 years have just been going down the drain in quality, um, everybody's finding old comics and new or an old manga and new manga to find now. So it's like
Yes.
it's not that the interest for the medium has died, it's that the people creating have we don't have good creators over here anymore, which
Oh
is
yes.
super frustrating, which is again one of the reasons why I started this entire project is like I want to find people who want to create and feel good. And this is actually one of the questions I wanted to turn it back around to
Oh wait,
for
hold up. Wait, I do have something to talk about. I think the
okay.
reason why I kind of like gave up on comic for a bit was I think the nail in the coffin. I don't know if you read that one, but like Doomsday Clock is actually the nail in the coffin for me.
Really? Okay.
Have you read that one?
So that was I actually already stopped reading. I'm really, really picky
Oh,
about what I spend my time doing since I'm
I
like
see.
I've only got one life, you know? So if there's like
Ah,
a
yeah.
new comic that people are talking about or a new show that people are talking about, a lot of times I will just read the cliff notes. So I know all of the Doomsday Clock story, But I didn't read the comic. I just waited until the entire story came out and read the summary.
It was like I don't even know what is the point of that story to begin with. It was kind of I think it was just like an attempt to, bring the Watchmen character into the spotlight again. And I thought it was like Watchmen was already perfect as the way it is. Like you don't really need to, like do anything with them. And it was kind of like,
I'll
oh,
tell
this
you
is
the
just
secret. The reason it happened is because they knew it would sell. Because
oh yes,
Watchmen's popular and DC's popular. So put them together, it's going to be popular. But again, kind of like you're saying, a lot of people don't have good memories of Doomsday Clock because it wasn't that good of a story. So while up front
yes,
it's sold, it will never sell again because it's not
oh yeah,
good. So, but like these stories right here, these will continue to be republished because they are still good stories.
oh
And so
yeah,
people will want them again and again, which is why telling good stories matters so much. It's kind of like with movies nowadays. I hardly ever go see a new movie, but I will still
oh same
go
here.
and watch old movies. Like I have a subscription to our chain down here called Cinemark, and I love the movie theater experience. Like I don't want movie theaters to go away. I run a once a month outdoor movie at my house. I like cinema that much. And aside from Project Hail Mary, I can't think of a new movie I've watched in theaters in a long time. The only one upcoming, and just because I like the IP, not because I expect it to be good, is He-Man. I just like He-Man.
Oh,
I
I
think
heard
it's
good
I think
things
it's
about
fun.
it.
I've been hearing good things about it too. So I'm like, is the tide actually turning? Because we got Project Hail Mary, which was amazing, and then He-Man, which I'm hearing is good. I'm not hearing that it's great. I'm hearing that it's good. So I'm like, okay, I still want to see a good movie. But at Cinemark, they do re-releases of classic movies. So it'll be like silent films, black and white films, films from the 80s and 60s and stuff. And I'll usually go and see those once a month whenever they re-release because those are still good and they're still worth seeing. And they're still
Oh,
worth
exactly.
owning and stuff. So, but like new movies, like why would I ever go see a new movie? They're all bad, you know?
Most of them are very uninspiring and more like corporate than art than anything. That's one of my problem with them.
Yeah. And that's why it's like with you, talking with you, I was like, oh, this is a dude who made something that was beautiful, well made, and actually had
Oh,
an interesting story. So I was like, okay,
oh,
well, I
thank
need to
you.
talk to him because he gets it. And talking to you more, it's nice to know that you also get like comics and movies and these other things as well, where you're like, I know what makes a good story. I'm going to suggest one story, and you're probably not actually going to be able to find this, so you might have to just research it online for
All right.
comics. I had been searching for this comic for a very long time. My favorite
Atomica.
artist is Alex Ross, and he did a lot of cover art for this, but the actual art inside of the book is way more exaggerated and animated. I mean, if you can see.
Ah,
So
I've
it's
heard of
it's
this comic before. Like I've heard of the name, but I don't think
yeah.
I've
So
read it.
the way I described it after reading it, it's a really like it makes you think comic. So it's Atomica.
Ah,
God is red, and so this character right here is Atomica. And the way I described it is it's essentially the Russian Cold War, that time period of history, but not told directly. It's kind of like if you could imagine that the Russian government and the Russian people had spirits representing them. This felt like it was the spirit of the people at the time being represented in a mythology of what Russia at that time could look like.
that is
It's really hard to
very
describe.
is interesting.
Yeah, so Atomica's mother was the spirit. It was Mother Russia herself.
Ah,
But Mother Russia was killed by Arnir, who is the Soviet state in this example. And so the Soviet state takes over Russia's future, which is Atomica, and turns Atomica into this mindless machine. And so they get Atomica to like systematically destroy all of the old gods of Russia so that all that's left is the Soviet machine and the Soviet state. But eventually, Atomica gives birth to Chernobyl, his son. And Chernobyl is more powerful than he is, but Chernobyl is unstable, and Chernobyl is controlled by the state. So you have the people, Atomica, having to fight against their own future, which is their own power, which is Chernobyl. And so at the end of the story, Atomica is always fighting over the fact that he's never creating anything new. He's just destroying what already was. And by the end of the story, Atomica destroys the Soviet state and then leaves Earth because he's like, man must decide for himself what to do. I no longer have a purpose here. And so Atomica leaves Earth entirely. And it's just the people on Earth left who get to decide the future for themselves. So it's like, it's really hard to describe what it's like reading the story, but it feels like it feels like that period of history turned into mythology so that it would last longer. It's very very unique and very interesting.
How do I put this? It sounds like a legend of some kind, where a certain thing that like get fabricated into like larger than life tale or something like that, and it sounds awesome. Honestly, I'm all for that.
The part that has stuck with me most after reading it, the very last, and it's the oldest god that Atomica fights. That god that he fights is essentially Earth itself. And so he goes over to it and he's like, I'm here to fight you, I'm here to kill you. And that god is the only one that doesn't fight back. That one just goes to him, basically asks him, he's like, look, I already know you're more powerful. I know that you're going to kill me. I'm not going to fight you. Is this all you want to do with your life, is destroy things? Because that's all you have ever done, and that's not what you were meant for. And so he just asks him that question, and then he just waits for Atomica to kill him, and Atomica kills him. But Atomica can never get over that fact. He's like, the foundational being for existence just allowed me to kill himself, or allowed me to kill him. And now I have to live with that fact, and now I have to think about what the future actually looks like. And it's funny because in another part of it, there are giants under the earth holding the earth's crust up. And he's told by Arnir to go destroy all the giants because they're like the last of the old gods, but they aren't gods, they're more like titans in Greek mythology. And so he goes and he kills all of them, but the earth starts imploding because nothing's holding the earth's crust up anymore. And so he has to stack all of the dead bodies on top of each other until they hold the earth's crust up with the dead bodies. And it's the first time where he does something to prevent death from occurring. And whenever he does that, he's like, is this what it feels like to create? To actually like create something and prevent destruction from occurring? And it's the first glimpse of what life could be like if he wasn't controlled by Arnir and he wasn't solely meant to kill things. And that's where his big turning point comes, and where he starts to fight against Arnir, his father, or the Soviet state. So it's super unique and interesting. You probably just have to find some clips of it online, because this was a Kickstarter. This stuff isn't like sold regularly. This was a one-off thing. Yeah.
Well, how did they even get Alex Ross to do the?
So Alex Ross on the original run did some of the cover works for it, for the original series run. But the original series was an Image Comics limited run. It was like fully paid for up front, and then it had been put to the side. It had been basically shelved for a really long time. And the guy finally went to Image again and was like, hey, can we re-release this? Because people are showing a lot of interest, including myself. I was one of the people that was been trying to find it. And so I
Well,
was
you
like,
sort of own a very like valuable relics in a way from the
yeah,
comic world.
I feel like I do. I really liked it, so I was like, this is cool, and it's something that I plan on reading again in the future. But it's a very dark comic, whereas I I tell me this. Why is Yomei like very bright and colorful, right? Because I find a lot of people nowadays create dark stories, and even whenever I'm trying to think of stories that I create, a lot of them are very dark, and I'm like, why do I want to create dark stories? Because I feel like dark stories aren't the best stories to tell. I feel like bright stories are the best stories to tell. So why is your story bright?
I think, oh, this is a very tough question, but I do have an answer for it. The thing that will happen in the story, obviously, not always going to be sunshine and rainbow,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. But I think as an author, I think it's not really my responsibility or anything, but it's my desire to keep on humanity's hope going. Sometimes it's very easy in life for you to fall into a very depressed and nihilistic state, in my opinion. Like especially in the modern society, it's very hard to portray things as bright and colorful because like most of the time a lot of the things that we experience now are very tough and especially like for artists like there are so many factors that kind of push us down. But I
Mm-hmm.
think if I could able to inspire some hope and well it's like I'm talking big or anything, but like in a way if I could at least like express something that is positive within a world that has a lot of conflict and a lot of problem, not in just our world but also in the world of Yomi, I think it could possibly inspire people to see the world around them in a better light and possibly make some change and not going to change the world or anything, but at least it could possibly change their way of thinking and maybe change their life. One of the good example that I have when it comes to this philosophy is that if you think about it, when you think about Van Gogh
Mm-hmm.
painting, right? Most of them are very bright and colorful, but like when you look at his life history, very depressing. But I think it is. I'm not okay. I'm not trying to say it in a bad way or anything, but like sometimes is easy to portray negative things as depressing and dark, but to be able to find hope and light in that in those tough time, it more like it kind of makes something that you create truly special. And
Yeah.
I kind of like go along with that same philosophy from like Van. Okay, it's obviously probably not his philosophy because we don't know like whether or not he said this or not because he's already like long passed away, like long gone. But to see the soul that he transfer into his painting, I kind of feel like, hey, despite all the tough time that like experienced, at the end of the day, the world that he painted onto the canvas is still a very bright and colorful one. Is that how he see the world? And for me, who study art, and for many people who study art history, or any people who don't know anything about art, when they see his picture, they simply see the beautiful thing and feel inspired. And I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, another guy that I can think of is Hayao Miyazaki from Studio Ghibli.
Oh yes, oh
Yeah,
yes,
or
I love that
you
guy.
see, but if you see the any of the conversations or the interviews he does, he's like such a brooding, depressed person, and then all the
I
stuff he
think
makes is so bright and colorful and hopeful.
I think he wants to create a world that he would want to be born into. I think that's
I think
what's
it's a
going
really
on.
good way of putting it.
Yes. Like, yeah, he knows that this world is not perfect and he's a byproduct of this imperfect world, but if his craft, his work could be passed on. Perhaps it could inspire people to see the world in better light and create, like I said, a world that he wished he could have been born into.
I Yeah. So this is an idea that I like running by people. Um, I think any story that ends with evil winning is lying. I'm still working out what I mean by this, but I'm sure you've seen movies where it's like at the end of the story, the bad guys win, all the heroes are dead, and nothing good happens by the end of it. And it's like with those stories, I always feel like I wasted my time watching them, no matter how good
Oh,
anything else was. But if you
yes.
have a story where everybody dies, but at the very end, the heroes win regardless because of their actions, to where it's like, uh, kind of like we'll go back to Star Wars Episode 5. It's like they end in a worse spot than where they started, but there is still hope at the end, so it still feels like it's honest with me.
Yes.
But if it ended to where the rebellion was just completely dead and gone, then I would not be happy with it. I'd be like, this story lied to
Oh
me.
no.
Um, so it's kind of like, I think innately inside of us there is an understanding that in the end, good wins no matter how much evil appears to win. And so it's like, I think for a story to be true, in the sense of not that it's like historically true, but that it's telling me the truth about reality, good has to win in some capacity.
I think us as humanity, and it's within our nature to reject destruction. I think that's what it is. Because like no matter how nihilistic or how depressed we seem, at the end of the day, when we are at the face of destruction, no matter what, we will reject it. Because at the end, we know deep down that, in this case, to live or good will will always be the choice that we, choose at the end.
Yeah, well, the way I think of it in like historical terms, it's like think of every terrible historical nation that's ever existed, like any atrocity that's ever occurred. It's like, is that terrible atrocity still occurring, or has humanity healed, moved on, and become better than that? And it's like we've always moved past the terrible government, the terrible people, and built something new and better at the end of it. So it's like it can seem in the moment of history and of experience, and you can have death at an incredible rate, but it's like at the end, evil didn't win the total victory. The total victory was won in the end by uh, greatness and hope, because we're still here and we're still enjoying things, we're still creating things, and we remember the past as being, tragic, and we remember some things in the past as being good, but we're still moving forward trying to do better every single day in the long run.
Yes. Like I said, you know, it's like our innate instinct to, try to do better and, believe in hope and reject total destruction of ourselves. And that's a
Yeah.
good thing because like deep down, I think humanity are all like, no matter how hopeless things may seem, at the end of the day, I think there's always this spark of hope within every single one of us. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's very important to remind ourselves sometimes.
So this is another interesting question, and it's one that I kind of want to start uh, asking to more creatives, because I think the answer is going to be kind of varied, but it might end up being the same. Um, Whenever do you so we have like uh, ancient civilizations which believed in gods and monsters and and spirits and stuff, and then you have more modern civilization saying none of these things existed because we have no evidence for them. And it's kind of like, do you think stories could exist if a spiritual realm didn't exist? Like, is storytelling somehow directly connected to the fact that there is a realm outside of the physical realm that exists that we can interact with, but maybe not directly? It's more like a theological question, I guess.
Yeah,
Like, do you think there actually is a spiritual world, or is it just the physical world? And does that change stories?
I think I think stories may still exist, but it wouldn't be as interesting as it is now, from what I think. Because like, okay, when you talk about the spiritual world, each different culture have their own interpretation of what it is, because they all have like different backgrounds and stuff like that, and they have their own imagination, and that's where the diversity in storytellings come from. Like, oh yeah, just the myth of creation, or from different religion all around the world, they all have different like way of going about it, despite being the same tale, about how certain things come to be, the sun, the moon, and all that stuff like that. And I think that's what make it interesting. If that were to be taken away and it's just be like the facts and logic alone, I don't think it would be as interesting or as imaginative as it is, because when we talk about the spiritual world, it's obviously something that we cannot see. Imagination of human, like of people, can run wild. And obviously when I talk about certain things and describe it from my own imagination, it would be completely different from what you may have imagined. And now, like, in a way, we already have two stories that are completely different to each other. Like, not two stories, but like two different depiction of the same thing now. Like, and I think that's what makes story interesting to begin with. And that's what, without that part, story would still some sort of exist, because they are obviously like, based on true story sort of story, where it only talking about like historical recording, stuff like that. But like, it would have been like, stories would not be as interesting as it is now.
Yeah, the I guess the real goal of the question is kind of like, do you have a belief in something that is like, do you have what could, I guess, essentially be considered a religious belief, that there's something outside of just the physical world, like spirits, not that you know what they are, but that they do exist?
That's tough, honestly. Like, me, I am like raised and grew up as a Buddhist, and like I'm sort of inclined to believe in that sort of thing. But like, as I grow up and understand things more, like, I'm not like completely disbeliever of it, but uh, it's kind of hard to tell, because I I I like to believe that there are things of higher dimension than we are, because if we can exist, then obviously there are other things that could exist, because we, somehow, like, I think that's an interesting thing to think about, honestly.
Yeah,
But obviously I cannot really pinpoint to how it is, like, what the existence of those thing is. It might be something different than what you imagine, in your head.
yeah. So, you said you were raised Buddhist. I was raised a Christian, and I've become in my own life fully convinced that I do think the Christian God's real and everything. Um, but I was, you said like you intake all of these other sources and you create a new story, right? I was
Yeah.
like, well, if you had no no previous story before the physical reality we live in, could you come up with the idea that there was a spiritual world? So it's like, if
Oh, that's
your
something.
only
Yeah.
reference point was creation, the creation itself, the physical reality we live in, could we have a reference point for something outside of the physical reality? So could you even have spirituality without spirits already pre-existing?
Mm. That's like that's like trying to invent a whole new understanding altogether, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
inventing a
So
thing that doesn't exist.
yeah, and so like with all the creation stories, right? Where you're talking about
Yeah.
how it's the same but different. I was like, well, maybe it's the same but different because we are stuck in the physical reality, but
Yeah.
everyone at the beginning knew or
Oh, there's like merge.
was connected to that spiritual reality at the beginning. So it's like they it, let me try to think of the right way of putting it. So it's essentially like the further forward we've gotten in time and the more scientific we've gotten, the less religious we've gotten. So it makes us go, oh, the spirit world doesn't exist at all. And it's like, well, no, no, no. You forgot that the spirit world existed, and it's always existed, and it existed before the physical world because the physical world can't exist without it. And that's why we have creation stories in the first place, is because we knew beforehand that there wasn't always the physical world. There was a spiritual world that created the physical world, and that's where story originates. That's where all things originate. So every story comes from the spirit
Spirit
world
world.
first. And every time we create a story, it's another variation of stories that existed or pre-existed, essentially. Because kind of like whenever I was talking earlier, how I said it's like I came up with this
It's like with
character, but I felt like I grabbed the character out of something that already existed, and I'm trying to bring that character into existence for everybody else to see, right? But it's like for me to have an
yeah.
understanding of creating a story in that way, it requires that there be an existence outside of the physical reality that my spirit is able to tap into. And then my spirit translates that into thoughts, and then my thoughts, translate that into body movements.
So the question is like, if that said spirit world doesn't exist, will I be able to tell the same story as I am now, or
Or rather, if that spirit world doesn't exist, could stories exist in the first place? Like I don't think stories can exist unless there is another reality outside of this reality, because our reference point for our oldest stories are not for things that exist in this reality. They're for things that exist outside of this reality. And we're still iterating on ideas talking about things that exist outside of our reality. And so it's like, what if that reference point is something that was built into us from an outside force? And that's one of the things that, for me, made me go and fully commit to like, there's actually something else out there that pre-existed, that already had a story, and whenever it created us. And that's why for me, like with Christianity, I like its story, because it's like, in the beginning God created, and then God created us for the intention of loving us. And then the idea of Christianity is that it's the story from which all the other stories branch out from. So it's like
uh,
every other religion, every other myth that's ever existed in some way, shape, or form is coming from that original story, which is just as true as the physical reality we live in. It's just we aren't as connected to it anymore because we've let go over time.
I think, can story exist without that bit? I think like as part of it can still like story as a whole, I think will be different because no matter what, like if there is human who's able to live, I think there can be interpretation of how that person lived their life in a way. It's like Atomica, for example. It's a story about the Soviet Union, and it's an actual history that it's only happened like what, like 100 years ago. And the Atomica, like you said, is a reinterpretation of of that story, but through myth, right? But if, say, the spiritual world where the supernatural aspect of the world doesn't exist and human has no knowledge about it, then we wouldn't be able to imagine or at least visualize it as much as we're able to do today. So I think that the visualization part and the mythify, is that a word? Like mythification of the state event will be more in line with what we're able to see today. It will not become something like larger than life God, but more so something that is we might be familiar with. Maybe something like along the line of, instead of magic, it will be more technology based or more sci-fi in a way, but we will lose that magical bit that we have in if we have no imagination or knowledge of that said spiritual world. In my opinion, we will lose the whimsical bits of our imagination when
Yeah.
it comes to story.
And that's kind of like that I feel like that's still kind of going towards my point where it's like you could write a story, but that would just be history as best remembered, right? But
Yes.
the actual
Yeah.
element that would make it a story, which is adding mythology to it,
Yes.
because
It'll be
story,
missing.
yeah, that part I think would completely be lacking, because it's like, how do I come up with the idea of a god if everything I experience is just my equals or another human being?
Yeah.
So it's like, I think a god had to already exist for me to be able to come up with the idea that a god exists. So it's like that
Yeah.
part of mythology, and so, and kind of like as I was describing with Atomica, where there's like he's the spirit of the people, right? It's like, well, how can I come up with the idea of a
Yeah. How do you?
spirit?
Yeah.
Yeah, or like a spirit of a collection of people, something that like kind of stands in response to a group, without that thing already existing, because all I would have reference for is the physical reality of just multiple people. So it's like, oh, it's not a spirit representing all of the people, it's just all of the people, you know? So it's
Yeah.
like I
Either
feel
that is
like,
gonna be completely sci-fi, where it's like reinterpreted as like a completely different thing altogether.
yeah, so
Because
at that point it's like, well, it's not, it's like, how do you come up with myths without the myth already existing, or the thing that makes the myth possible to be imagined already existing?
yeah, I don't think
It's a
I
very
I don't
high
really think
level
you can.
question, but it's a
Yeah.
question I want to start
Yes,
asking more
exactly. Like I
people.
don't think you can because like especially not in this day and age where it would sound absurd to come up with like something so larger than life itself, or even if you can, it would just become more so like a superhero type thing rather than like
Hmm.
actual myth that is like larger than life, you know?
Yeah, and so it's just, it's one of those things that still gets me, but it's one of those things where it's like, if everything created is a reference to something else, not that that exact reference exists in another plane of existence, but the fact that something exists in another plane of existence allows me to amalgamate that thing with other experiences I've had. And that's how I'm able to come
Mhm.
up with original and unique ideas.
That that is a very high like level
Yeah.
question.
But it's kind of that question that fully cemented me in being like, there's more than just the physical world.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, if that thing outside existed before this world, then it has to have a will and it has to have love, right? So that's the other
Yes.
thing that gets me, because it's like, well, why would it create in the first place? It's like, why do I create? Why do I create any of my characters? It's because I love my characters. I want them to exist. I want people to experience them and love them the way that I love my characters. So it's like, maybe my act of creation is merely a reference point to the thing before's act of creation. So I'm just
Oh, you
iterating on
mean
the same story.
like a loop of step where, like you've been created and then you create things that like is in like it's like a step, right?
Yeah, it's like I
Where
said. Or just think if you had a kid, right? And that kid created something. Your kid might have similar ideas to you because it has some of your DNA passed down to it. I don't know how that would
ah
potentially work. So it's like you are the creator of that child, and you can suggest ideas to the child, and the child can also come up with its own ideas. But without you, the child wouldn't exist, so the child wouldn't have the ability to create. And you add a reference point outside of the child itself for it to continue creating. But extrapolate that to a point beyond yourself
yeah.
and beyond the physical world we live in. It's like the origin
Mm-hmm.
point of all things to where everything is real at the exact same time. And then it chooses to create. And so now we have the ability to create every single kind of story that one can imagine because the thing before already existed and it is infinite. So it has all things inside of it.
That is so tough, like to think about because, like, in a way, like a thing like this can be like an infinite loop of existential crisis in a way, though.
Yeah, but this is where the point or the idea of love comes in then, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, but if it creates and I create because I love, if it created because it loved, then there doesn't need to be an existential side to it. The reason it created in the first place is love, which means it has a good plan for me, a good desire for me,
Uh,
right? And so it's like this is why I also think stories that end with zero hope are lies, because it's like if the thing that created in the first place created out of love, then the end must also be good because I don't like having stories where my characters lose. I like having stories where my
yes.
characters go through trials but come out victorious. Even if some of them die along the way, the ones they die for a reason, some of them will die for bad reasons and some of them die for good reasons, but at the end of the story itself, all of the things that those characters went through will be worth it for the end of that story. And so it's like, okay, what if reality is the exact same way, but for the reference point of that being before, to where everything that exists and happens in this life that we experience, some of it's going to be absolutely tragic, and some people are going to get off scot free. But at the very end of the story of this world, all of those things were necessary to tell the greatest story, and the story's ending is hopeful and good.
Mm.
So for a story to not end hopeful and good, no matter how many tragedies occur along the way, would be for story to lie because it's telling you a false narrative about reality itself.
Yeah, that's the way. Like I completely agree with that, honestly, because I think there was like a point of me who like when I try to come up with the end of the story to be as memorable as possible, and one of the things that I came up with was like some sort of a bittersweet to a tragic story, and I couldn't bring myself to actually said that this is the ending because like you said, it's a lie. And I think I lied to myself. Like, if I make that a reality where the story ends, because, I know deep down true to my heart that, like you said, every single creation is kind of created with love. And I love my world, I love my character, and I love my, my creation. And I would wish to have the best possible resolution for them while also making it make sense. Like you said, like it may have some trials, maybe something tragic that happened, but by the end of it, their life and all that they experience will not be in vain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just there's something here. I'm still trying to figure out the best explanation for it, but it's one of those things that I want to, and it's why it's like you have a different worldview than I have. So bringing this idea to you is very interesting because you will have potentially a slightly different answer than what I've been able to come up with So it allows me to expand and come up with a better idea for how to explain it to other people. And I'm very interested. I'm waiting for the time to see if I end up talking to somebody who doesn't believe that there's anything else out there, and I bring this idea to them. I want to see what somebody who has zero belief in anything outside of this physical reality conceptualizes story.
Yeah, like conceptualize like imagination. But then again, like could you? But to be fair, I don't think you necessarily have to believe that those things exist to be able to imagine it, like imagine them. That's the thing.
No,
But
you don't have to believe that they exist.
yeah,
But could they exist without them? My belief in something doesn't make that thing real. Right? Like, say I didn't believe in dinosaurs, but dinosaurs still existed, right? So it's like, okay, my belief in dinosaurs doesn't make dinosaurs real. I could write stories about dinosaurs without believing that they were real. And I could the entire time be writing and saying, this is all made up, dinosaurs aren't real, but I'm writing a story about dinosaurs. But if dinosaurs weren't actually real, could I then write about dinosaurs?
I don't think no, because there wouldn't be a concept about dinosaurs for you to,
Exactly. So I don't have to believe in them, but I can still reference them because they already existed. So their existence, their existence being real actually matters for my ability to, in the first place, have a story about dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So I have about 10 minutes left. I went ahead and extended the time because I was having too much fun with the conversation. But
oh yes.
I literally text my friends. It's like, I'm going to be longer than I expected.
Sorry if I keep you there.
No. I see them all the time anyways, so it's not like a big deal on that end. So some quick questions. What is your favorite color?
Yes. Teal.
Teal.
I know it's teal and gold are two my favorite.
Teal and gold. Do those colors?
Funny enough, my name actually means gold. Like my name actually means gold. Like Jin, yeah, it means gold in Chinese.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Like my character is just basically like the character, like the way I write my name is actually just go in Chinese, like the Chinese character of it.
I'm making a note of that. There we go. Yeah, if you see me looking down, I have an entire sheet of notes and questions to try and keep me on track. So all the stuff I've been keeping track of.
I've made you off track with all the comics talk and all this stuff.
Well, the comics are good because it's something that you use as a reference point to come up with your ideas, right? So there are inspirations for you.
The manga and stuff. Yeah.
What is your favorite dinosaur?
The Spinosaurus.
Spinosaurus.
I know
you're the first Spinosaurus.
Kind of like the bottom of the joke nowadays because of how like, the more we discover, the less cool it's become. But like, I still think it's very cool.
Hey, you get to choose your favorite. No one else gets to choose your favorite. All right?
Yes.
Do your shoes make you run fast?
Yes, because it wouldn't like if I don't wear shoes, then it would hurt my legs, like my foot, and I wouldn't be able to run fast.
Yeah, I always like asking those questions because these are the questions that children always ask you. And I was like, if children are asking these questions, they must be important, right?
So is that like an actual like psychological reason, like to?
No, I just thought it would be fun because it's like we have all these big talks and conversations and everything, and then like the last set of questions you get asked is the same questions that a 6-year-old on the street randomly walks up to you and just goes, check me out, I've got these shoes, I can run fast now. And you're like, cool for you, right? It's really just to be endearing and fun. And since you talk about needing to see other media, say like 3 movies, bands, comics, manga, just stories that matter that you think people should check out.
All right. Movies. I think I said it before. I've tried to convince so many people to watch the Chinese Odyssey. A Chinese Odyssey. That is a very lovely movie. I'm trying to think of another movie. Oh, TV series. There is this Japanese drama called Jin, like basically my name. I grew up watching that movie and actually influenced me. That TV series. I think that and a lot of Japanese TV drama is like play a huge role in my like upcoming and my inspiration for like many things. That's why I like am very intrigued with like Japanese culture and stuff like that because
Yeah,
of like
Japan's
I
just
grew up
been
watching a
winning
lot.
when it comes to culture and stories lately.
Yes, for me, yeah, it's usually the TV drama that got me
Is
into
that live action or animated?
live action.
Live
It's
action.
called Jin. I believe it's on Netflix too. It's about a doctor from the present day, well, 2008, because it was back in like the show was made back in like 2008 to 2007 or something. He got sent back to the Edo period of Japan, and he was kind of like having this dilemma whether or not he should use his modern day medical knowledge to help the people of the past or not. Because if he goes about using the modern way of medical skills and knowledge, it might affect the time, like the timeline, affect how history works. But at the same time, his duty as a doctor, he can't just you know leave people to die. And it's very interesting on how he choose and make a choice and stuff like that, and also how he's able to utilize the modern technique using the Edo period material or Edo period knowledge during that time, because obviously they don't have access to many of the modern medical like equipment and stuff like that. And I think it's such a lovely show. Have like wonderful human drama and also very intriguing way to view history and historical figures too. The show is called Jin, like just Jin, Jin.
All right.
Japanese
Perfect.
drama. Very good. Manga. Oh man. I think I'm just going to recommend Berserk for people. Obviously, it's quite heavy. The story is obviously not for everybody, but I think it's a very inspiring story about a man who everything has gone wrong in his life and the world is against him. But despite all that, he still pushed through and defy fate in order to continue living his life and possibly find his happiness. And that is such a wonderful story with wonderful art.
Yeah,
I'm
this
trying to
is
think of.
just real quick on Berserk. It's one of those things where I'm like, no matter how dark the story is, it's actually a hopeful story in the end, though, right? So
Yes,
it still feels like it's telling me the truth, even though so much inside of it is bad. At the very core of the story is the fact that Guts is still going forward, doing good,
yes,
with the hope that things will get better. So I'm like, yes, that's the
exactly.
truth. No matter how dark it gets,
He
you
never
are
give
still a
up.
good guy. Yeah.
Yes, he never give up. Unlike his friend, well, the enemy for
Griffin.
now,
Griffith.
Griffith. He definitely shows the wrong path. But yeah, yeah. Don't want to spoil anything. What else? Free Ren is a very good story too. I don't
All
know
of
if you
my
heard
friends are watching Free Run.
Yes, Free Ren is such a wonderful story. Funny thing about story is that like when I was researching things for Yomi and try to find a way for me to possibly write the best possible story, I look into Free Ren and I really fell in love with Free Ren at first. But at first, I was not able to understand how it was even written in this way, because it's a fantasy story, but it has so much humanity in them, and it's not even a story about like fantasy story anymore. It's about a story about people. And I try so hard to understand how it was made, but I spent like months trying to dissect it. It was just like, how did someone actually write this? Because it's so like so true to the heart of humanity. So what I learned is that I don't need to look into fantasy story to try and understand how Free Rent is written, but more so I have to understand and look more into the story of regular people and then put the story, like put the fantasy aspect into their life instead of like, coming up with the fantasy story first. That's what I learned from reading Free Rent and watching Free Rent. Trying to think. Video games, I highly recommend a game called Automata. I
Oh,
don't know if
that
you
game was
heard.
really popular. Yeah.
Yes, is anything in that Nier series is very good. Nier Replicant is very good. Nier Automata is a masterpiece in every way possible. The music, the game, the story, and the presentation of the story itself through video games. That is a masterpiece of a game. Masterclass. What else? Other media. I'm trying to think because I watched some movies recently. I'm trying to think. It's like sometimes I watch a lot of things and it kind of jumble up together.
I understand.
Yeah. Anime, I really recommend people checking out. I'm trying to think because I think I recently watched something and it was very good as well. I think I'll recommend two things because I'll recommend three things actually. I think the first thing is obvious already. I think many people have watched it and is Neon Genesis Evangelion. Very good anime. Second one, I highly recommend Steingate, which is a story about time travel. I think it's one of the most interesting story about time travel I've ever watched. Is basically takes place in a very small district of Akihabara, which is one of the district in Tokyo, and it's a story about something so larger than life, such as time travel, but it takes place in a very urban setting where everything seems so mundane, yet it's so important to the character lives. And I think it's like such an impactful story. Another story that I highly recommend is this one is very recent actually. An anime movie called Look Back. It's a story about two girls who want to make comics, and yeah, that's just mainly about it. Like the story about two girls who try to make comics. One of them is actually one of them is a hikikomori, which is the same symptom as the my character Minari as well. Is a very common thing that happen in all around the world. I think different cultures kind of deal with it differently. I will not get into that right now. But like one of them is like a girl who, I think I'll just leave it to people to actually check it out myself. But it's like a story, a very heartwarming and a very inspiring story about two girls who are trying to make a comic series. Songs. Well, I don't really have any particular songs that I have in mind right now.
All right, just move on to the next thing then.
Yes, all right, sure. Is there anything else?
How about a comic? Just because we mentioned comics, but you just mentioned mangas.
Comics. I really like the Mr. Miracle comic by Tom King.
I also really like Mr. Miracle.
Yes.
I like
Have you read
him,
that one?
and I haven't gotten my hands on it yet. But he's a character that I really like. I like him and Barda's dynamic a lot, and I really
yes, I like
love
the dynamic of these two.
The Question. You know him? He's a DC.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my hands on some of his stuff too because I love his concept as a hero. Those are both characters that I really want to get their comic books for. I just haven't managed to get them yet.
Yes. For the story that I recommended, Mr. Miracle, what is so interesting about this story is that, when you talk about Darkseid and the New God, they're usually the crisis level threat, right? But in this story, it's basically just a family drama between Mr. Miracle and Barda and Darkseid and everyone. It's just one big family, which is a big mess, and
that one's just called Mr. Miracle,
like,
right?
Yeah, I think it's called Mr. Miracle.
Okay.
By Tom King, I think. Oh, actually, now that I mention it, I think two of the comics that I mentioned today is also like both made by Tom King. I know he's such a controversial figure in the comic world because like a lot
Yeah,
of people
he's definitely
dislike
done some
the
weird
way.
stuff.
Yes, but I'm not gonna deny that like I'm not that big a fan of some of the stuff that he made, but I cannot deny that The Woman of Tomorrow and Mr. Miracle are phenomenal work. I think these two stories are the reason why I think it's so interesting is that he was not really trying to write a superhero story. He trying to write a character story. That's why it's so interesting. And yeah, especially Mr. Miracle, I absolutely love that run. I
I've
think
only
it's only
heard good
like
things
six.
about it.
Yes, it's only like 6 issues, I think. Like
Yeah, it
it's
was a
pretty
short.
short. Yes, it's very short. Very good story too.
All right. Where can people find you?
You can watch my stuff on my YouTube channel called EsperJyn, and also I do post some of my illustration and update on Instagram with the same name, EsperJyn as well. And that's mostly it for now because I don't really use anything else. But yeah,
And the Brick
those are
channel, the Brick Gin, right?
the EsperJyn channel. If you want to watch Lego stuff, sure, but there's no guarantee that I will be able to make a lot of the promise, come true. Because I do have some other project that I have to occupy myself with.
There's always a new project for the creatives.
Yes, absolutely. There's always this project and the next one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been an
All
amazing
right.
conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been an incredible experience, a very fun interview, very fun talking to you.